Bitcoiners, pre-coiners, no coiners, new coiners, and of course, Swan Force members, welcome to Swan Lounge, a weekly show in which you get to hang out with the Swan team and some of our friends from the incredibly exciting world of Bitcoin. Now, before we dive in, as always, we are giving away Jan Pritzker's book, Inventing Bitcoin, in an effort to spread Bitcoin knowledge. We're giving it away for free, so go and get your copy if you haven't gotten it yet. You can get it at swanbitcoin.com/free book. We have it in 3 different ebook formats and MP3 read by our friend Guy Swan over at Bitcoin Audible. All we ask is that you pay it forward by sharing the book with at least 3 friends and family, preferably more. Inventing Bitcoin is the book I send to literally everyone who is new to Bitcoin and they're looking to get started. It's short, it's easy to understand, and you come away knowing not only how Bitcoin works, but also why it is so important. We also have the book available en español y puede descargar su copia en www.swanbitcoin.com/libro gratis. Still needs a little work, but I'm getting there. Even more exciting, we are also giving away Gigi's incredible book, 21 Lessons. If you haven't read it yet, it is a must read. Go to swanbitcoin.com/21 lessons. That's 21 lessons to get your free copy. And again, all these links are in the description below, so make sure to check them out. Now, I've got to ask, are you signed up for Swan Force? Because if you're not, as always, I'm not angry at you. I'm just disappointed. Very disappointed. Swan Force is our amazing referral program where you get paid in Bitcoin to recruit new Bitcoiners to Swan. Sign up at swanbitcoin.com/enlist to get started. Toshi, no, don't yawn. We're just starting the show. You can't do that. Sorry, everybody. My dog, he's very excited about the Swan referral program where you go and you get out of here. You sign up again at swanbitcoin.com/enlist. You'll earn 25% of Swan's fees on their purchases for an entire year, and your referral gets $10 of free Bitcoin when they open an account with Swan. Now, what is Swan Bitcoin? Maybe you came upon this YouTube channel and you're like, what's going on here? What is Swan? What is Swan Bitcoin? Is Swan Bitcoin a different type of Bitcoin? No, there's only one Bitcoin, and it is Bitcoin. Swan Bitcoin, quite simply, is the easiest and best place to get started with buying Bitcoin, either automatically on a recurring system, which is what I do and so many others do. It's basically my savings plan, or you can buy instantly, or you can do both. When we dip like today, we had this crazy dip down to 60K. What are we going to do? Nothing to worry about, folks. We're going to be fine. But on a day like today, you might want to smash buy, and we offer that too. And at Swan, you can get started in as few as 5 minutes. You go from zero to buying Bitcoin in no time at all. For automatic dollar cost averaging, we have fees up to 80% lower than Coinbase. And like I said, incredibly fast onboarding. And unlike Coinbase, we have real people. That's right, real people you can talk to if you happen to run into any trouble. Just go to swanbitcoin.com/support. We're happy to help you. Even more exciting, we will be launching Swan Advisor Services this fall. This new platform will offer Bitcoin buying and custodial services for registered investment advisors. All right, maybe that's not as exciting to you as it is to me, but if you're a registered investment advisor, get in touch. Now, before I bring in our guests, one last thing, please hit that like button and hit subscribe. Doing so helps us get seen on YouTube and helps us grow the show so we can reach more people and help them see why Bitcoin is so special. Now, today, we have some very special guests. We have Dylan LeClair, co-founder of 21stparadigm.com. He specializes in on-chain analytics and financial markets and hosts the Deep Dive for Bitcoin magazine. He also looks like Robert Pattinson. He's like the best-looking Bitcoiner I've ever seen. It's crazy. You're going to get to see for yourself. I imagine he's just up all night sucking blood and looking at financial markets, but he'll introduce himself and tell us all a little bit more about him. We've got Andy Edstrom, the author of Why Buy Bitcoin. You know him, you love him. We have him on SSL all the time. One of the smartest people in Bitcoin I know. One of the other smartest people in Bitcoin I know. We've got Cory Klippsten, our founder and CEO here at Swan Bitcoin. He's also an advisor to Riot Blockchain. And we've got Terrence Yang, the managing director of Swan Private Client Services. He's an ex-Wall Streeter, but don't hold that against him. And he's a Harvard law grad. I am going to hold that against him because I tried to get into Harvard and they wouldn't have me. So poo-poo on that. All right, for today's show, I wanted to dive into what is happening in the markets and in the Bitcoin ecosystem more broadly. Here on Swan Lounge, we don't really focus on price that often. We try to, reach our Bitcoin Zen. But with the recent and new all-time high, I think it's important that we take a look at what's happening. We discuss some of the potential underlying causes and try to understand where we are headed next, both in the short term and the long term. There's a lot to discuss, and I need to take a breather and breathe. And exciting show. So now it's time for Swan Lounge. Give me one sec. I will unmute our guests. Looks like we lost Terrence. Oh no. Hopefully he'll come back. How you doing, everybody? Welcome to Swan Lounge.
What a week.
Yo.
What a week.
What a week it's been.
All right, initial reactions on the week. What did you do when you woke up and you saw that all-time high? Did you, jump out of bed like in the movies? Andy, let's start with you. What was your initial reaction on seeing that all-time high?
Yeah, you're gonna laugh at this, but I actually woke up like 2 hours early, and I woke up. I went to the bathroom. It's still dark out. I'm going back to sleep, and I'm lying in bed, and I can't get back to sleep. What's going on? This doesn't usually happen to me, and I resisted the urge to check price for a while. And then, when I checked, it hadn't quite gotten there, but it was just bumping up. It was just climbing. And I feel like Bitcoin was speaking to me a little and shaking me awake. So, that was my all-time high story.
I like to think that my body is now on block time, not on price time. But for some reason on these days, I'm with you. I'm up early. I know there's something going on. I got to wake up and see what's happening. Dylan, how did you feel on that day? And maybe if you could tell everyone a little bit about yourself, because you're new to Swan Lounge.
Yeah, first time on the show, so thanks for having me. I am a Swan user. I've been stacking for a little bit, so pretty boss product. But yeah, I mean, I just work for Bitcoin Magazine. I had their research team, and we put out a daily markets newsletter. Kind of focused, like the broader thesis is Bitcoin is the apex predator of money, and it's already won out. But for people that want to kind of look under the hood, we dig into that stuff and derivatives on chain, kind of just show what's happening. And so, that's basically it.
Love it. Cory, how are you feeling this week? Are you bullish? Are you bearish? I think you're always pretty bullish. How you doing?
I'm always pretty bullish. I think we know that we got this one right. And it's nice. 60K ain't what it used to be, way back in May when 60K was worth a lot more than it is today because of the money printer. But it's still nice to hit that milestone and be back up there at 65 earlier this week. It's just a pit stop, as I tweeted a few minutes ago. 16x from here is $1 million a coin. We did 16x since last year. So, these things run in percentage terms, and it's just so early. Any Bitcoin you can buy before sat cent parity, before the year 2030, is a cheap Satoshi. Snap that thing up.
My favorite thing, sorry, I just want to point out, my favorite thing was getting the Daily Bitcoiner that day. And then the first line reading, the bears are on life support today. And I was just like, it's going to be a great day.
Yeah.
Cory,
I'll show that later. I'm not going to show that right now. I'll show it later.
I had to say it though, because that's what made my morning. I was like, yes,
nice.
This is great.
Sign up for
the start of another parabolic bull run. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be crazy.
All right, well, let's dive in. Okay, you say there's going to be another parabolic bull run, and I'm with you. But what are the macro forces that we should be looking at right now? And I'm looking at Andy and I'm looking at Dylan here. Putting aside the hope that Bitcoin gives all of us, is anything keeping you up at night? What has you worried about the economy? What has you bullish on Bitcoin? What should the average Bitcoiner be looking at right now?
All right. So I'll jump in there. So at 6:30 Pacific this morning, I gave a presentation to a client of mine, which is an endowment, and they have a portfolio that we manage for them, and it includes stocks and bonds. And for the last couple of years, it's included an asset class I like to call hard money assets. And the reason it includes that asset class is what Cory said a minute ago, which is the money printer keeps going burr. And the bonds out there aren't going to make it for you. There's going to be, I think, a major shift out of bonds into hard money assets. And the hard money asset of the past was gold, and the hard money asset of the present and the future is Bitcoin. So to me, the money printing is the biggest macro factor. That's like the huge elephant in the room. It's the most important thing. And then the second thing I'll say is although it's felt like shouting into the void for years now, I finally see my financial advisor brothers and sisters paying attention to Bitcoin, and I think they're finally ready to adopt it. And there's $10 trillion or so of assets managed by financial advisors just in the US. It's more than that globally. And I think that tap is finally about to open, and that could be a huge source of demand. And we know what supply is. So incremental demand, we know what happens after that.
What happens after that, Andy? Tell the people who don't know what happens after that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that happens after that is Swan launches a service to take advantage of that, and I've been helping Swan out in that respect, and it's going well so far.
Andy, you're not supposed to leak these things on the show, okay? We have a
I don't think
system in place.
I don't think my helping out is a leak.
To be fair,
That's
this
true.
is basically a Swan marketing meeting that we're
Yes.
just sharing with the rest of the world. So
It is.
Yeah, Dylan, you're actually consulting to the Swan marketing team for free right now. We appreciate
Yes.
it.
I'll send you an invoice. No worries.
Awesome.
Well, all right. Let's be fair, Dylan. You have this awesome newsletter. Shill the newsletter. Tell everyone what the deep dive is all about, and really just kind of for the people like myself who haven't paid for it and haven't signed up. You know, what am I missing out on? What are some on-chain analytics that are important these days? That, like, why are you bullish from an on-chain perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I would preface it with saying that in the newsletter, like, there's no trading signals, and in the newsletter, I state for 99.99% of market participants, the best and the best thing to do, the only thing to do is to stack and hodl, and you know, you're not going to be buying here and selling here your way to wealth, unless you really are, you know, in that 99th percentile, and so. But basically the deep dive, yeah, we cover on-chain analytics. Basically, like, you can see this, we know the 21 million supply cap, but you can see on-chain, you can see stuff like those imbalances with supply and demand forming in real time, right? So when Bitcoin's kind of consolidating at 9K for all of 2020, what you can see is that an increasing amount of this free float is being taken off the market. And so, like, stuff like that, where just from like a risk reward perspective, in terms of, you know, I will say that, you know, even though we're not giving trading signals, we'll say, like, you know, from a risk reward standpoint, with the price of Bitcoin down 60% from the all-time high, the entire derivative market bearish, and no one selling, leverage over the long term with you know, with something you could service with cash flow is very attractive. We'll say things like that. And so the deep dive, we, you know, or like a dichotomy between the spot market and derivative market, which you saw at the top in April, and then, well, you know, there is no top, but and then the bottom, you know, in July. And so just kind of things like that, where people just, you know, want to see what's happening under the hood. And, you know, we just kind of dig into that. And I enjoy, you know, crafting it up.
Love it. I just got a note from Terrence. He's trying to rejoin us. I think he's really secretly upset with me for poo-pooing Harvard, but we'll see if he joins us again. Dylan, thank you for sharing that. Can
I touch on one of Andy's points?
Yes, please.
With the financial advisors, and, you know, I can only imagine kind of seeing this and preaching it to a crowd that you know, doesn't, you know, it's like bashing your head on a wall for years until 2020 happens, and then the financial repression, and there being no choice for these central bankers and central planners, and literally it's a playbook they're following since like 2010 about liquidating sovereign debt with financial repression, printing money, Keynesian economics, stimulating demand, which creates supply chain issues, which makes inflation run hot, which is solved with more money printing and more financial repression. Like, you either with a bond, right? The treasury bond, you know, if you're just thinking of that, there's $30 trillion of government debt. If you're thinking about the global bond market, which is everything is based off the treasury, you basically have $300 trillion, $200 trillion, whatever it is, of unreal amount of capital. That's you know, it's a guarantee that there's going to be either a credit risk, which is because of deflation, if they don't print the money, but they're going to print the money. So there's the inflation and the dilution risk. So it's like buying a bond at zero, the zero bound today. There's like infinite risk priced at the lowest amount of risk ever. And so now we're all accumulating this Bitcoin thing, saying we know the gig's up, and we're just front running you. And it's you know, it's kind of fun to see.
Andy, I see you nodding. What do you have to add to that? Oh, Andy, you're muted.
Andy, I'm going to just
My bad,
no,
my
stay,
bad,
stay
sorry.
on mute. You just talk, and then I'll mouth over what you're saying. Okay. So,
Do the
we're
voiceover.
seeing people going way out on the risk curve right now, and the S&P 500 has actually hit its all-time highs today as well. And bonds, treasuries, and
It's really
well
funny.
done,
You just,
well done.
It's
Corey,
really
can
funny you
you-
just did that.
Corey,
One
can
thing
you-
real quick. I got to share this. I was literally telling Camila before we got started, I was like, should I do my intro that I usually do? Or should I just play Brady's intro from SSL and like pretend to lip sync it? I was literally thinking about doing this. So it's so weird that you guys, anyway, Andy.
Next time, do it next time. And Corey, you now have responsibility for presenting to my client. I don't want to do those meetings anymore. Look at Brekkie go.
okay.
Oh man, yeah, no, Dylan, you nailed it. Everything you just described is going on. It's really weird being in Bitcoin, and everybody who's watching knows this. I mean, some of the noobs are figuring it out, but like, there's no all the pieces are set. There's no escaping this outcome as far as I could see, and so it's just a question of how long it takes. It's just a question of when, and heads are going to explode. And eyes are going to pop out of them. And yeah, it's going to be, I'm actually a little scared to watch it. I'm hopeful that we have a peaceful transition onto Bitcoin. And I think we will. And I'm hopeful that it takes a lot of time and that we all get to stack a lot in the meantime. But it might not take that much time. We'll see.
I was going to save inflation to the end, but I think we're kind of touching on it now. So let's dive in. Inflation. I'm saying it 3 times because it's real. On Wednesday, Paul Tudor Jones said, I think to me, the number one issue facing Main Street investors is inflation. And it's pretty clear to me that inflation is not transitory. He said further, inflation can be much worse than what we fear. We have the demand side of the equation, and that is $3.5 trillion greater than what it normally would have just sitting in liquid deposits. They can go into stocks or crypto or real estate or be consumed. So that's a huge amount of dry powder just sitting, waiting to be utilized at some point, which is why inflation is not going away. And then today we had Jerome Powell on a BIS panel who said, we don't know how long it will take for inflation to abate. Like, they're actually coming to terms with this. I didn't really want us to just sit here and say we're right, but we're freaking right. Okay. We've been right. Bitcoiners have been right since the beginning. Are they ever going to wake up? Are they ever going to actually come out here and really say, all right, we screwed up? Or are they like, how much further down the road can they kick this can? What's going on with inflation? Talk to me here, ladies and gents.
I have a question. Not every Bitcoiner, believe it or not, is an inflationist. Dylan, one of your colleagues, CK, moderated a debate I did with Ansel Lindner. I think it was about a year and a half ago. He kept arguing that we're going to have a deflationary environment. So I'm tempted to declare victory now, but we'll see how it turns out. But believe it or not, there are deflationists still in Bitcoin.
I think it comes down to the fact that with fiat money and credit, every dollar is lent into existence, and it's lent and needs to be paid back plus interest. So like, I would be extremely bullish on the dollar. If you could self-custody it, you can't. There's always counterparty risk. And 2, they couldn't print more of them. There will 100% be another deflationary bust. The only thing is, how do they respond? And the response is more MMT, more debt monetization. So like, that is another credit contraction going to happen eventually, and probably a vol spike and a big sell-off in every asset because like the denominator, the USD, is going up. I would say so, just because of the dollar debt dynamics. Some sort of insolvency risk, some credit risk, that spreads fast regardless of how much power the Fed has or the market thinks the Fed has. But in the end of the day, they're going to print more money. Like, we all know this. So arguing about it, deflation is something that, I think it's maybe not short-sighted, but misguided maybe.
I mean, what do you think also about the transitory nature of this inflation? I mean, Camila, last time you went to a grocery store, what were prices like? I don't know about you, but like, it hasn't been good for me.
We were just talking about it, my husband and I, earlier, trying to defrost some chicken, and we look at the price and we're like, 2 things of chicken for like almost $10. What is this? This is insane. Like, do we go to Costco, get a membership, and like buy wholesale? Because, if we keep up like this, it's not good.
Highly recommend a chest freezer. I got one at the beginning of the pandemic. It's worked out really well. I split a cow with somebody in the chat. Actually, the beef has been treating me very well. Buy wholesale. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is the narrative has failed, right? Like they've said that it's transitory, and now they're kind of saying, oh, it's going to go longer and longer. You know, is this the Great Decline? Is this the decline of the Roman Empire that we're living through? Where is inflation headed? Terrence, welcome back. And never mind. Goodbye, Terrence.
Terrence is just pranking us.
Can you hear me?
Yep. No, we can hear you now. Let me turn your volume up a little bit.
I'm transitory. I apologize.
Terrence, any thoughts on inflation, on Paul Tudor Jones speaking about inflation, or on Jerome Powell admitting that we don't know how long it's going to take for this inflation to abate?
Yeah, the inflation looks persistent. Not surprising given all the money that's been printed, and the economy has largely recovered to some extent, right? And we have supply chain issues, so prices are up, and I think the Fed finally recognizes that. The eye tests that all of us have seen have shown that there's been inflation. Paul Tudor Jones, extremely well-respected financier and hedge fund manager, extremely well respected, someone who also gets Bitcoin, really understands that you can build on top of it. So many smart people are working on it to constantly improve it, unlike gold. So yeah, he sees inflation. He sees Bitcoin as the inflation hedge. I think it's great.
It's definitely nice to see, to confirm what we've all been thinking. Cory,
I just have an anecdote. Sometimes I host barbecues for Bitcoiners, and Terrence has been to the last couple. And 2 times ago, he brought a nice big bag of beef jerky with him. And but the last time he didn't show up with the jerky. It was too expensive. All he did was he brought me a watermelon, and I was personally disappointed by that. But I understand.
And a cheap bottle of wine.
Yeah. I understand that his budget is now constrained because prices of jerky keep going up.
Yeah.
We're in that point of the Titanic
Thank
where
you
we
for
just
negotiating my raise with my boss.
I was going to say we're at that point in the Titanic where we know the boat is sinking. The ship is sinking. We all see it, and Bitcoin is the only way to get saved. That's at the point we're at right now. Everyone is not partying anymore on the ship. They're just panicking now, and the Bitcoiners are going for the life rafts. That's what's going on.
We're going for the Noah's Ark. Bitcoin is the Ark. We're gonna go party over there. Everyone can get on. Tickets are still cheap. They're still available. So
I bet Dylan has got a read on which lifeboats are being jumped into by which buyers in the market right now. What do you say, Dylan?
I would say it's going to get pretty crazy here. We over the last 3 months, I think when you're looking at stuff happening on chain, just the accumulation. I mean, you can quantify, hey, 85% of Bitcoin hasn't moved in 3 months. That's an all-time high. So you can see this float just literally getting smaller and smaller by the day. And despite the bullish price action since the bottom in July, you've seen almost like bear until a couple of days ago. You saw like literally the day that Bitcoin hit all-time highs. You saw the first time that like long-term holders took a tiny like sliver off the table. But you saw this relentless accumulation that looks like past bear markets or consolidation periods, despite the fact that we were breaking all-time highs. And like anytime you see the Bitcoin chart and the previous high, and then there's a crash, and then once it breaks the previous high, you know what happens next. But we've never really had that while like we're completely still in almost like what the data would say is like a huge bear market accumulation. So it's gonna get just on the supply demand imbalance as I think more and more people wake up and realize like it's not like Bitcoin's $1,000 and it's still almost a computer science experiment and there's one exchange. There's global liquidity everywhere. You have respected investors. You have anon plebs on the internet that are smarter in macroeconomics than PhDs, right? That are like cartoon characters on Twitter just absolutely ratioing these like, you know, Paul Krugman, who won a Nobel Prize in economics. And you have the entire world front running it and saying like, oh, I know the gig's up. I'm not gonna sell at all. Like I don't ever need to sell for dollars. And the beauty of it is now, like with the, you know, as Bitcoin kind of integrates more into the legacy system, people think that's bad. Well, I don't have to sell my Bitcoin ever. If I have enough Bitcoin, I can borrow against it, you know, with 1% of my stack for generations and just keep rolling it over as long as the dollar's alive, as long as the dollar's still there. Which, you know, I'm very bearish on the dollar, but I don't think it just is obsolete in 10 years. I think it'll still be around and it'll be an exchange rate. So that's the exciting thing, is that you have this kind of new paradigm, this new market cycle of, you know, the financialization of Bitcoin allows these risk-free rates set by the Fed to blow up in real time, especially when you see stuff like Bitcoin futures, Bitcoin, and maybe not the CME, but like Bitcoin settled future contracts. Well, what is that essentially? As these grow in prevalence and kind of global liquidity. Well, with a Bitcoin futures contract, you essentially have, denominated in dollars, you have almost like the risk-free like rate. It's almost like the cost of capital. If I can sell you a Bitcoin in you know, next December, or promise to, and I had that Bitcoin in escrow, and I can buy spot today and capture a 20% yield for doing nothing with no risk, obviously exchange risk, etc. But what does that do to the rates that are set by the Fed in the bond market? The $200 trillion of capital that's getting 1%, right? Like that's kind of what I get to watch in real time, and it's really exciting. Is that like the financialization of Bitcoin, and as it integrates with everything else, I think it has a chance, unfortunately, Andy, to accelerate really, really fast. Maybe maybe not ugly. I hope it's the you know, societal ramifications of it occurring so fast aren't ugly, and I'm optimistic. I'm you know, a rational optimist about Bitcoin and a technologist, but I think this current system can unwind really, really fast as trust is lost.
Yeah, the timing is impossible to know. I agree with everything you said, Dylan. And this is why we Bitcoin, and this is why we Swan, right? We're trying to get notwithstanding the fact that maybe 90% of those lifeboats are currently occupied and not being let go, based on the on-chain data that Dylan has been analyzing. Notwithstanding that fact, there are some lifeboats still available, and we're all trying to educate our friends and our family and get them into those lifeboats, you know, before this reset happens. And I like the 1 decade framing. You know, the dollar will still be around in a decade. What will the purchasing power be? I have no idea. You know, how many more halvings until Bitcoin is the preferred money of the world? I also have no idea. Like I say, I hope it doesn't take. I hope it takes a few halvings more, but I definitely could be wrong.
Hey, Andy, what are you? Sorry, real quick, Andy, what are you telling your clients these days in terms of lifeboats? You know, like my only lifeboat is Bitcoin for the most part. You know, are your clients at, you know, 1 to 2%, or like, are you still, you know, advising them to go into fixed income and equities? Like what does a portfolio look like for, you know, one of your clients these days?
Yeah. So I think all my clients are in Bitcoin, and our average position now is just under 6%. So it's meaningful. It's not 1 or 2%. Now, a lot of that has been gains, right? Because I was buying for them as far back as 2019, you know, when we were at single digit Bitcoin price, single digit thousands, below 10K. But we still own a bunch of stocks. You know, there's a very likely scenario is kind of the melt up, right? It's like, yeah, there'll be bear markets. Okay. There'll be shocks, stocks and risk assets go down, and then the Fed and the government ride to the rescue, and you could get a repeat of what we saw a year ago, March, or a year and a half ago, March, when it was mayhem for a little while, and then all was well because they just printed so much money and broke all the rules about monetary policy and the limits that they're supposed to abide by. So, yeah, I think stocks, there's a good chance that they continue to do rather well. It really is the bonds. It's the fixed income that I worry about the most in the long term. That said, by the way, stock prices are pretty high right now. You know, I'm personally a little bit in the Preston Pish camp of stocks are going to be a great deal some point in the future when interest rates normalize, because Bitcoin has largely taken over. I don't think we're close to that, but but there will be an opportunity there. But yeah, for my clients, it's like if it was 60-40, some years ago, now it's like, I don't know, maybe it's 60-30-10, right? 10 is the hard money assets, which is majority Bitcoin at this point. And that 10% hard money assets probably is going to rise with time at the expense of the fixed income and bonds.
Andy, I'm not sure if you can share this. Do you ever advise your clients? Like, I know you said they're just kind of letting it ride. Like the 6% has grown. Do you ever do they ever rebalance down?
So
or do you let it rip?
we
Not allowed.
We haven't yet. If price triples from here, will I have to do some rebalancing? Sadly, yes, probably. But that'd be a good problem to have. Will be a double-digit percentage of the overall portfolio, which to a lot of swans doesn't sound very high, but for your average normie investor, it's way high. They'll figure it out, though. They're figuring it out.
It is
Cory,
way high. In fact, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Terrence.
Oh, in fact, both Fidelity and I think it's called Two Oceans, two fund managers, they have research reports that talk about 1%, 3%, and 5% allocation to Bitcoin, not 6% or more than that. A lot of institutional investors, family offices, they're just not ready to put a huge percentage into Bitcoin.
They just don't have Andy as their financial advisor. That's why they need to get a better financial advisor.
There will be more like me
Absolutely.
before too long. I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic. They're coming around. So they're slowly learning. I'm curious, Dylan. Do you see any interest for maybe? I don't know if you can tell, but are you seeing inbound interest from financial advisors? In addition to retail, I know it's a small segment, but
Yeah, I've talked with I have a friend, Chris King, and he's at Eagle Broke Advisors, and can't just disclose anything in particular, and he didn't disclose too much with me, but there's a lot of inbound interest for sure. I mean, the futures ETF is okay, and there's been billions of dollars of net inflows, not just trading volume, but inflows. Like the CME went from being a pittance of total futures market open interest, derivatives market open interest, to now being the biggest in open interest, I guess, after the close today, because it doesn't trade 24/7 in the world. And so, there's big demand from U.S. public markets to get Bitcoin exposure, and GBTC and even the futures ETF doesn't really cut it too well because there is that rolling cost and you're basically your value against Bitcoin, even if it goes up 1,000% because Bitcoin performs like crazy. Your value is essentially going to decay against Bitcoin because there's that rollover cost of buying the futures and having to buy the next month and buy the next month, which usually trades above the spot price. But a spot ETF will come at some point, but it's still not there. So financial advisors just in general have been kind of held back and are, obviously now they see the opportunity more clearly. And Bitcoin has legitimized itself and kind of grown up and just continues to rip down FUD after China FUD, and now we're back at 60K, and Elon doesn't mean anything to the market again, and just all this stuff that Bitcoin just keeps on ticking.
It's nice to see.
What if Elon takes some of his, what's his net worth now? $230 billion, I think, or $220 billion net worth.
Yeah,
it's crazy how that was a big deal when it went above 100 last year, and now it's way above 200. It's nuts. Yeah, it's funny. I was just thinking about the the small allocation targets of some of these reports, and we've been running the Daily Bitcoiner now for about 3 weeks, which is and it's been a great thing. Cory.substack.com. Grab that; it's free. But the funny thing is, we've had one piece of hate mail so far, and it was earlier this week, or it was either Friday or Monday, and we included Wences Casares' thing from 2019, the case for a small allocation to Bitcoin. And some Bitcoiner really hated the idea of a small allocation to Bitcoin. and I don't know this person's name, but they wrote me and they were like, you posting this and including this in your newsletter means you know nothing about Bitcoin.
You know nothing about Bitcoin, Cory.
I was like, you're right. I probably should have got out ahead of that and at least put a better intro to including that piece. But it's funny. The logic in that piece is incredibly sound because it just makes the case for Bitcoin. But it's obviously for like a money manager type audience and just trying to get them off zero, especially in 2019 context and timing is important. But it's pretty funny. It's still one of my favorite pieces. But the advice is not advice that I would give. I think you need a pretty sizable allocation to Bitcoin, whoever you are.
What I don't understand is what are these corporate treasurers doing? We saw Michael Saylor come in at 9K in August of 2020, say there's a problem we identified in March 2020. We got slapped in the face. I realized I'm sitting on a melting ice cube of T-bills and bonds and money market securities or whatever it was. 500 million's worth, like 10 years of his net income, essentially. Buys a bunch of Bitcoin. Not only that, but then levers up his balance sheet like a 0% cost of capital. And even the junk bond raise of 6% that he's paying, that's secured by the Bitcoin that he has yet to purchase. He goes out and inflation's running at 5%, and he goes out and buys 500 million at 37K. And then he goes, he dilutes his equity because he thinks the equity multiple is too high and buys more Bitcoin. And it continues to rip. So what are these corporate treasurers thinking? And obviously MicroStrategy is not really too big, right? But these guys are at least watching, saying, what is this nut job doing? And they probably think it's risky and irresponsible. But I personally don't. None of us think that Bitcoin is like, I think Michael Saylor's his like the cost basis or his break even point for that 500 million he borrowed in the junk debt market due in 2027. I think it's like 55K in 2027. And it's like, when is the first company going to come out and borrow $15 billion at ridiculously low rates? And obviously that would explode this market. Like, there's not enough sell side liquidity to absorb these numbers yet, but who's going to be the next guy? Because there will be one, there will be another company. And that's like, I'm kind of excited for this earnings season, and I'm not too like optimistic. I'm not sure if any news will come out, but I'm certainly expecting it at some point.
One of the most
I think go ahead, Brekkie. I was just going to say, I mean, the next big development, I think, has been the public company Bitcoin miners sitting on their Bitcoin instead of selling it, and now starting to access not only at the money offerings, which, like Riot's been doing some of those, and some of the other ones have been just selling more stock because it's just cheap and the market absorbs it, but also now taking out debt as well. To finance operations. But at the end of the day, if you're financing operations with debt so that you can not sell Bitcoin, it amounts to the same thing. So it's really like, when I look at like Riot, and this is all public, not insider info or anything, but that's essentially what they're doing. They're buying tons of Bitcoin by financing operations with debt instead of selling Bitcoin to finance operations. They're doing the exact same thing as MicroStrategy now. And it's on the order of like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars already. And people are sleeping on that.
Do you think that some of these companies that are, sitting on piles of money and thinking about putting some into Bitcoin, they need something like these ETFs that have come out as more, social proof for them? Like, what do you think is holding them up in terms of, why aren't there more Michael Saylors out there already?
I got that one. At least this is my hypothesis. So yeah, Michael Saylor, shot the starting gun last year. It was middle of last year.
You shot the starting gun and caught the bullet. You were the one.
You're very kind. I got lucky on that call, right? Helps having worked in junk bond markets before, realizing, oh wait, he could borrow to buy Bitcoin, and he far exceeded my expectations on how far he went, as Dylan pointed out. But yeah, so he started it, and then of course he came out with this informational series, right? There was this conference, I think it was in February. It was like the whole playbook, how Michael Saylor bought balance sheet Bitcoin for MicroStrategy. So, there were, I think, thousands of participants on that call. That doesn't mean that they were all, corporate treasurers, but no doubt there were some. My belief is that if you move really fast through due diligence on what is Bitcoin, legal review of whether you can, hold it and custody it, review and onboarding of your custody options, like who you're going to actually hire to hold the stuff, because none of these companies, right, are holding their own keys. Reviewing the accounting implications, basically running all these steps. This takes months and months of work. I think Saylor said he did it. He went from 0 to buying, and I can't remember if it was 6 months or 9 months. But he will have been the fastest mover. So other companies are going to take longer. Well, so you say, okay, it's been a year, but remember we had the crash, obviously, from 64 to 28. My guess is that there were serious discussions in boardrooms on this stuff, and then price went down, and that agenda item was removed from the board agenda for a while. And now they're probably hitting restart, right? Or maybe they restarted a few months ago. So if it restarted the clock, then it could be later, it could be next year.
Isn't that kind of crazy though? Like you see this all the time with human beings themselves, right? The price goes up and they're like, oh, should I buy now? The price goes down and they're scared. And it happens at a corporate level too. It makes, if only they could take a step back and remember how they felt and understand that the fundamentals have not changed whatsoever. So it's.
Yeah. In fact, they've improved, right? We don't have this overhang of China, quote unquote, controlling the network. That's gone. It's great news.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the
Tether though, you guys, Tether though, but Tether. Just kidding.
No FUD allowed on this channel, Cory. No FUD. Not
Tether's
even
really pumping the price.
Yeah.
Keep pumping.
Please blow up. Tether, please blow up. Let's let's get past it.
The Tether FUD is still real though. Like I have a buddy who former Guggenheim guy, and I sent him the news that PIMCO was getting into Bitcoin, and he came back with Tether FUD, and I'm like, dude, this is articles from 3 years ago. It's never going away. I think maybe it will eventually, but it's still here, and we still
the craziest part about the Tether FUD is the people that throw it at Bitcoin. It's like almost a bigger risk or like an equally big risk to credit markets, because all stablecoins is just like a pointing at the Fed saying you better not break the buck with the bond market, basically. Because I would honestly say the bond market's like kind of a quasi money supply, right? And because of like the convexity of like bonds and the kind of the 40-year secular bull market we just saw with everything, they can't let rates get raised, and so you have stable coins, which is essentially like credit securities, whether it's short or long duration, that they're basically saying, yeah, this is good for a buck. So it's almost like a check on the central bank saying like, and they came in and monetized the junk bond market, and they bought corporate debt, right? Like they're doing all this stuff anyway, and Bitcoin's not their worry at the moment. But when Bitcoin's a $5 trillion or $10 trillion asset, and there's $500 billion of stable coins, I think it gets really interesting in the sense that stable coins are so much a threat to like Bitcoin, like if Tether blows up. But what does it do to actual like bond markets, to credit markets, if they can't make it on that? Because there's going to be ripple effects in that scenario.
Indeed, there could be ripple effects, and cranky Uncle Andy will remind the Bitcoiners, please don't use leverage. Don't get flash crashed on Kraken. Don't get your levered position liquidated because price goes from 60 something K to 8K for a second.
That wasn't Kraken this week anyway. That was Binance US, just to be clear.
Oh, it was Binance? Why did I think it was Kraken?
Because
all the traders on Binance US are devastated.
The quarterly report that you did, Andy, with Preston earlier this year, where you guys were talking about it, if no one has seen it, where you're talking about leverage and why you shouldn't leverage, everyone should watch that episode. I think it's my favorite episode thus far. It was a great learning experience, especially for people that are coming in that are tempted. They're super tempted to get into these programs, but you're right, it's really, really dangerous.
We had someone who responded to one of our tweets today about not speaking over them in terms of some of this like deep financial jargon. Andy or Cory, could one of you talk about what leverage is, why someone shouldn't use it, or why they should at least understand the risks before they do it? What is leverage? What is the difference between buying Bitcoin itself and taking a levered position out?
Yeah, sure. I'll start, and thank you for those kind words, Camila. So leverage is when you borrow money, usually it's dollars, and you buy more Bitcoin than you can afford to buy in your account. So if you put $1,000 into your account and you buy more than $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, okay, now you're using leverage. And why is this a problem? If it works out and the price goes up, it's wonderful. You make extra money. Just like if you buy a house and you borrow 80% of the purchase price and the house price doubles, right? You make like 5 times your money. Okay, fantastic when markets are going up. Here's the problem, and here's what's different from owning Bitcoin with leverage versus owning your house with a mortgage. With your mortgage, if the price of housing goes down, as long as you can make the interest payment, you're okay. In Bitcoin, it's completely different. You get what's called liquidated, or as we prefer to say, REKT, wrecked.
It's a
right?
technical term, yes.
Technical term. If the price goes down, you can get the rug yanked from out of you, or from under you, and you can be 100% right about how the price of Bitcoin is going up in the long run, and yet you can lose your stack on the way because the price gapped downward for a short period of time. So that's basically what leverage is, and it scares the hell out of me. And I know I'm a broken record on the topic, and I published an article on it earlier this year before the downturn, which came sooner than I anticipated. But clearly there was some wreckage. There are some plebs got wrecked right earlier this year, and I really hope and pray that it doesn't happen a second time.
Dylan, don't lie. Are you trading with leverage right now? I keep seeing you look at the charts.
No, I'm not.
How highly levered are you, Dylan?
I'm not. I don't have liquidatable leverage. I have I have unsecured leverage, which with sats in my cold storage. That's the type of leverage that I'm okay with. But yeah, I mean Andy's dead on. With this with the volatility of Bitcoin, and honestly, like the market tends to they see these imbalances with derivatives, right? Like everybody sees it, it's public data. A lot of the especially in I think it was May 19th when Bitcoin was down 25% in an hour from 40K to 30K there for a little bit. And everybody got billions of dollars of liquidations. What you saw right before that was you saw the funding rate spike. Everybody was long, and then everyone kept buying the dip with more leverage. And a bunch of whales came in, saw it because everybody can see it, and the market sold all their as much Bitcoin as they could. And the entire market, not being able to absorb the spot, came in. So honestly, the leverage, the derivatives, it's whipsaws the price back and forth. But both long and shorts, directionally betting, the imbalances always get wiped out. There's no free rides, essentially. There will be people that make money leverage trading, yeah, but the market takes that back, more often than not. It almost seeks it out.
So we're coming up towards the end of our time, and Dylan, I know you might have to jet a little bit early, but I wanted to touch on ETFs a little bit before we all go. We had the ProShares ETF come out. Valkyrie, I think, just started trading. Van Eck might be trading next week. Say again, Cory?
I'm just throwing up the Valkyrie. Those are good Bitcoin homies, Steve and Leah. So congratulations to them.
Did you see what Leah said? She came in hot. She said, subject matter expertise is very important. We have it, and I think ProShares doesn't. I'd be surprised if they knew a miner from an oracle. I was dying when I saw that. Oh, man. But what I wanted to kind of touch on is how are all these ETFs going to change the overall Bitcoin landscape, if at all? Are these sort of a temporary trend as more people learn about Bitcoin and learn that they can self-custody it? Dylan, we were kind of talking about this on Spaces yesterday, so I'd love to hear your thoughts and Cory's thoughts and anyone else who has thoughts.
Yeah, I would just say from a market impact standpoint, they're not buying spot Bitcoin. They're buying CME cash settled futures. But I would say for price and for market movement, it is a net benefit what it basically does is it bids up if there's net inflows, which there have been. It bids up the price of the CME curve, the futures curve relative to spot, and it basically puts an incentive out there to capture, right? I'm not going to sell my Bitcoin for a 15% annualized yield, but there's a lot of people in Wall Street and institutions and fixed income that would, and so it kind of incentivizes these market participants to come in and capture this spread, and they have to do that. To sell the futures, you have to buy the spot to capture this. So what it does is kind of indirectly, I think, takes off Bitcoin off the market, especially when you see when this news came out. What you saw was the annualized rate for all of these, basically the futures curve got bid up really hard across exchanges, not just CME. And so what that does, I think it basically incentivizes more spot demand. But I would never buy the product. I don't tell people to buy the futures ETF product. Buy your own Bitcoin and learn to self-custody. Get a savings plan with Swan. But it is a net benefit. So, in my opinion.
Yeah, structurally it's a net benefit, but then also just like signaling, as we kind of hit on, it's a huge net benefit.
It's a narrative.
The way I like to think about this is like, I want to say it was probably Ross Stevens back in January at the sort of NYDIG 2-day thing that kind of painted a picture. And I think he actually said it, but he just painted this picture of like a bell curve of the expected future outcomes for Bitcoin price. And he said like the left side of the curve is chopped off. And it still felt kind of aspirational at that time back in January. But some of the things that have happened this year, especially sort of culminating in hitting the 60s, going back down, 50% retracement, and then coming all the way back up in pretty short order to where we are now. And then you see the ETFs going live, which makes you feel like, okay, it's not going to be that far off for a spot ETF. You see, like the biggest haters like JP Morgan actually having private Bitcoin funds for their, PWM clients, stuff like that. Like this to me felt like the final sort of nail in the coffin for the left side of the curve that includes sort of lower outcomes for Bitcoin over any time frame. It's just like you need to really readjust and sort of double again whatever your forecast was. If you were thinking that you're going to hit 500K by 2026, you should be thinking that's $1 million. If you thought it was going to be 5 million by 2035, you should be thinking 10 million. Like everything should double now because so much risk has been taken off the table. Like it's all your models are destroyed. The number goes up forever, Laura.
Andy, do you agree?
I agree completely. I mean, I've had frustration over the years. The favorite piece of FUD, from institutions is the government ban. It's the prohibition, and I still occasionally get the question, and I have to contain myself and remain calm. But I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what are you smoking that you think that Bitcoin is going to be prohibited in the United States of America, where there's an ETF, where people are coming in mass, where now we have a third of the mining capacity, allegedly, depending on whose data you look at. I mean, Bitcoin is freedom money. Bitcoin and America are aligned. Politicians, some of them are finally going to figure out that Bitcoin is our one real shot at a peaceful transition out of the debt debacle. And it's here to stay. It's going higher. It's really hard for me to imagine Bitcoin going away.
So, by the way, you couldn't script this better. I just checked Twitter and just hit home to see what it said at the top. And the very top tweet is from 14 minutes ago from Bitcoin Magazine. And it's Dan Moorhead from Pantera saying, I think Bitcoin will go up 10x in 5 years. Literally 3 weeks ago, he was everywhere saying that the opportunity for Bitcoin is to go up 5x.
Wow.
There it is.
Right? Boom. He doubled it in his head. And the only reason he's been saying that is to try to, he's been, sandbagging Bitcoin to try to get LP capital for venture investments and trying to say that he can outperform Bitcoin. So that's the only reason he's sandbagging Bitcoin in the first place, just to be clear.
Yo, guys, I gotta run here. We got our all hands at 4:30 here, but I appreciate you having me on, and it was fun riffing back and forth.
Shout out from the Swans to all the Mag folks. We love you.
Peace.
Great meeting you, Dylan.
See you soon.
Appreciate it, Dylan. Got to say, that was a very strong first appearance on the show from Dylan. He's welcome back anytime.
Dylan's got the goods.
Well,
what were you doing when you were like 19, Brekkie? I don't think I was hanging with Edstrom back and forth at all.
No, I was in college, and I was kind of put off by the finance guys. They were all Wharton guys, and their values were not my values. I love them to death, some of these guys, but I wish we'd had Bitcoin back then. Would have kept me focused.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
At 19, I was in my macroeconomics class, not understanding anything, and I'm glad, because later on I didn't have to unlearn a whole bunch of stuff, and now I'm learning. So never too late.
Yeah, well said,
Terrence. Yeah.
I wish I had skipped macroeconomics in college. I wish I hadn't majored in it because it sent me in completely the wrong direction for understanding Bitcoin. It was negative. It had negative value. That was negative educational value for me.
Yeah. Terrence, so when you were 19, what was the summer of love like? How was it back then?
Terrence is offended. Terrence is like, I'm not that old.
He's not going to come on anyway. I'm just kidding. He's not that old. It's actually like very close in age to me. Man, 19, college. I don't know. I wasn't thinking about this kind of world changing type stuff. That's for sure. It's probably playing basketball like 12 hours a day.
No, you were throwing parties, and now you're throwing Bitcoin parties. So
I was definitely going out that night, I'm sure.
Well, I think that was a pretty great episode of Swan Lounge. What's before we end, what's everyone doing this weekend? I want to hear a little personal update. Andy, what's going on in your life? When's the next barbecue? You know, what's happening with you?
So I was supposed to go to BitDevs LA. BitDevs LA is having an event about nodes. It's basically like,
are we not carpooling? We're not carpooling. You're not going with me?
We're not carpooling. I was supposed to go, and then for my daughter's birthday, having a party Sunday, and we invited her new class and her former class of friends, and we got 50 families RSVPing. Yes, we're coming, and we realized we couldn't handle that, so we split the party in two. So now we're gonna do one group on Saturday and one group on Sunday, which means I can't go to BitDevs LA, but people should totally go if they're in the LA area. So I get double kids' birthday party.
All right, that's a fair excuse. Camila, what's new and exciting? What's up? What's going on this weekend?
This weekend, I think I'm just gonna chill with my husband, just brainstorm more stuff, more Bitcoin talk. That's basically all of our weekends, whether we're driving up to the mountains, listening to a podcast. And that's basically how he orange pilled me also. A year ago, I would listen to podcasts. Everything would just kind of go over my head. A lot of stuff still goes over my head, but I feel like, I'm learning. I'm open to learning. So it's just a journey, man. It's exciting.
That happened to me. I used to go to Bitcoin. I still go to Bitcoin meetups, but I used to too. But I would go and I wouldn't understand what was being said. They were very technical. And a few meetups later, during the Q&A, I found myself asking questions, and I did a double take because I was so surprised that I had actually just been learning by listening to things that were above my head. And it happens slowly, but eventually it starts to sink in. So Cory, Terrence, we'll go to you first. Family time this weekend. What are you up to?
Oh yeah, definitely having some friends over tomorrow and again on Sunday. Families with kids in both cases, so a little bit of work, maybe slip in a little bit of conversation. Don't have any hardcore orange pilling to do. They both are Bitcoiners. Will be really fun on Sunday. It's a friend of a few years who actually runs corporate finance for Square, so I always get a little bit of nuggets and insight there, which is kind of fun for me. And then otherwise, I think I'll probably spend some time on loop.net looking for the new office and studio space for Swan Studios somewhere on the west side of LA. We've kind of decided that, Andy needs a better set and Brekkie needs a better set. And now that we have Terrence this is the LA crew basically, plus Camila. So I think there are enough of us now that we should probably have a place to congregate on the daily if we choose to. So it's going to be fun to find that.
All right. So I'm going to say it again. I said it in our meeting, a Bitcoin shaped pool, a rock climbing wall would be nice. Permanent beefsteak barbecue area would be great.
We're going to have once a week deliveries of limestone blocks for carving. Just, whatever you want to do. Lots of hammers and chisels for all visitors.
Tungsten cube.
And then we're going to have a spotlight so we can put the swan signal in the sky every single night that there's any clouds whatsoever.
The meme is coming to life. We have that GIF on Twitter, and now it's going to be a real thing. It's going to be a real thing. We got to put the swan in the sky. Do you have the swan signal shirt on right now? You have one version of it, yeah.
I have one.
Okay, so we have both. We'll have the super swan and the swan stamp the raised wings as well.
We'll compete with the spotlights over in Hollywood, because if you've never been to Hollywood, there's always spotlights going in the sky. But we'll just get a stronger one, and we'll outshine their spotlights. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Terrence, how about you, sir? What's up? You going to the Bitcoin meetup? What are you doing this weekend? Are you orange pilling more people? What's happening? You're muted. I'm sorry.
He's muted.
But yeah, I'll be going to that and see my cousin and my nephews on Sunday. Yeah.
Love it. All right, everybody. It's been a great episode. It was kind of a moon juice episode. So I want to remind everyone that Bitcoin is not just about number go up. It's about number of people go up. So if you don't know about our project, Bitcoin is for everyone, go to swanbitcoin.com, or actually, no, we have a new website, bitcoinisforeveryone.org. Go and visit, check it out, see our progress. And I'm going to play a little video that we made to kind of to share the project with everybody, and then we'll use that to take us out. So we hope you have a great weekend. Go sign up for Swan if you're not signed up for Swan, because all the cool kids are doing it. Come on. And we'll see you possibly next week, or on Twitter, or wherever we see you. Say hi to us. We like to say hi.
Bitcoin is for everyone.
Wait, no. Hold on. Well, no, it is for everyone, but hold on.
He's not wrong.
Bitcoin is for everybody. It doesn't matter what you do, who you are, it definitely is going to change your life.
Bitcoin is for single mothers building their empires.
Bitcoin es para emprendedores en pequeños negocios.
Bitcoin is for geeks.
For gig workers.
For returned Peace Corps volunteers.
The entire human race.
比特币适合所有人 including without limitation, lawyers, caregivers, patriots, and Wall Street.
De los jardineros hasta los licenciados, hasta los presidentes.
Bitcoin is for geologists, for marketers,
for teachers,
for women who are entrepreneurs.
Bitcoin is for office workers everywhere.
For technology consultants.
For venture capitalists.
For cybersecurity professionals.
For game developers.
For rappers.
For entrepreneurs.
Bitcoin's for everyone, even the kids.
Es para todos. Es para todos.
Bitcoin is for Black people. And believe it or not, Bitcoin is for bankers.
Bitcoin is for balding white men.
Bitcoin is for filmmakers.
Bitcoin is for students.
It's just for everybody. That's it.
Bitcoin is for lifelong learners.
For you and me.
For electricians and electrical engineers.
For freelancers.
Bitcoin is for old parts too.
Bitcoin è per gli insegnanti di canto.
Bitcoin is for janitors and warehouse workers.
Bitcoin is for revolutionaries and renegades, permaculturalists, ecologists, sovereigntists.
Bitcoin для тех, которые покинули свою страну в поисках свободы. Bitcoin is for those who left their country seeking freedom.
Bitcoin is for anyone who's thinking about retirement in the next 5 years. You need it. Question.
Bitcoin is for fashion designers.
Bitcoin is for podcasters.
For theater makers. For people in events. For entrepreneurs. For literally everyone.
¿Para quién es Bitcoin?
Bueno, nosotros somos Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's for teachers, Bitcoin's for YouTubers, Bitcoin is for engineers, Bitcoin is for Uber drivers, Bitcoin is for anybody that is on the face of the earth. Bitcoin doesn't care about the color of your skin or your ethnicity. Bitcoin's for everybody.